Hello, you guys. Welcome to the channel. Welcome to this delightful afternoon that we're having with um, a little superpower chat that we're going to have with Rage Against the Dark Arts. So, Rage Against the Dark Arts is actually joining us today to actually um, be doing her very, very first live, you guys. So please give it up to the amazing, wonderful Rage Against the Dark Arts.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you going?
Well, you know what? Not bad. It's a chill, chill vibe here in Los
I'm going to
Angeles.
move this slightly so you can see. There we go.
No, I'm like literally my hair is like sticking out from my Oh, you guys, we had to get over here as soon as we could. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello, Happy Puffin. Hello, Banco. So many of you guys that are here to wish Miriam luck on her very first live, you guys. This is Rage
Yay.
Against the Dark Arts first live. How does it feel to be on your first live, Miriam?
It feels amazing. I'm so excited. I love that I'm doing it with you as well. It's beautiful. Maybe it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. Good morning, Miriam. Lots of love from Melbourne. So, see, you already have
Yay.
more ragers over there, more people wanting to rage, rage, and rage.
Yeah, it's so cool because I'm not in Melbourne. I'm about an hour away from Melbourne, but it's so cool whenever I see, local Aussies. So exciting. I'd love to go and show up at the Melbourne Scientology organization. I think I want to do it like first go by myself and just kind of feel what that is like, and then I'd love to like start a thing where people like more and more people gather. That would be fun. But yeah, we'll see.
Well, you know what? I think we're going to have to send you with some bodyguards. You're not going to go. You're Rage Against the Dark Arts. And you know what? We're going to get some volunteers that can live stream your live stream because there's no way in hell that we just told them that you're coming and you're not going to be literally
True.
surrounded with bodyguards because you know what?
Yeah, look out.
We know their shady ways. We know they only have one mode. Being shady AF is about the only thing you ever get with those people, you guys, please.
That's true. That's true. But
Yeah.
it'll be
So,
fun. Mm-hmm.
so yeah, you guys, Miriam and I wanted to do this live to discuss our superpower and to just dive into some other like personal projects that we're working on in terms of art therapy, which is something, as you guys know, I already do with Surge. And actually, there's several other creators that are also having a lot of conversations and plans to turn, you know, to turn that as the literal superpower. It's like we spent our whole childhoods dreaming about being able to have superpowers. And then, you know what? It turns out that
Mm.
all you need to do is use your creativity, which is the superpower that everybody was born with. You don't have to pay, you don't have to literally do anything. You just have to spend time with yourself, by yourself, in your thoughts, and just like use creativity. It's almost like it becomes you, because I always tell that to people when I'm doing the art. It's like I never know anything. It's just about like getting in the flow of actually just showing up, and
Mm-hmm.
then the process overtakes you. Like there's no like methodology to it.
Yeah, I think that self-expression is a superhero power, and that's why it's really important in schooling and in like school-age children to really support and nourish those types of abilities, and also offer a range of things. So, like, it could even, art could be doing theater or music, or could be visual art. There's so many different ways that you can do it. And when I was a kid, in I was in a dormitory. I remember, I was really young, and what we did is we got a bunch of paper and we stapled along one side of it to make that into like our like book, and then we would just write, write in there and write stories. And I would write about being a girl who had superpowers. So it's definitely, yeah, I feel really strongly about that. And you dream when you're a kid, and you fantasize, of it's definitely a good way to survive. It can help you to survive some tough situations. And I know that, like, in my experience, the art and that sort of thing, and expression, self-expression, individual expression, was not supported or nurtured, or there was no resources provided for it. So it's really, really important. Yeah, and so I don't know what it's like in America, but in Australia, they tend to have some of that in all of the public schools, so the government funded schools for
Mhm.
kids, where they'll have, and unfortunately the funding is not equal everywhere, and there's a bit of a campaign going on to equal that funding out. But yeah, we'll see kids do really, really well when we support their creativity. And also linked into that, I would say that reading and writing is really, really important as like a core skill. So
Mm.
literacy, so that we can read and understand and gain more power. And then in writing, we can express how we feel about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that, the issue of Scientology is that they definitely used art to make it look palatable, right? Like
Right.
everything was about doing art. So I always felt like, never mind that I always hated the art. I hated, like, I
Yeah.
just was born with this like critical revulsion about.
Because the art that was, I mean, there was no allowance for creativity for me, or like there wasn't any resource for that. But if you did have some kind of inclination towards it, you were immediately told, even as a kid, oh, you could use that. You would do that basically under the banner of like a Hubbard, purpose, or a Scientology purpose. And like we've seen, like the Jive Aces, that is like yeah. So it was like, and there's only room for one band, I guess. I know they had like a bunch of musicians, but yeah, everything is like this, the Celebrity Center kids on stage for a better world. It's like those are all Scientology kids, but they have to do it under this thing of this banner of Scientology. Everything is like this forwarding of Hubbard, forwarding of Scientology. It can only be for that purpose. Well, that's not self-expression. That's the complete opposite of that. Yeah.
And we're seeing that, right, Miriam, as I stood outside the Nickelodeon studios the other week with Alexa for Meat Predators, which, by the way, you guys in the chat, we're going to be doing a protest on March 6th at the LAPD with Alexa
Wow.
for Meat Predators. And, we're really joining forces, right? Because that is really actually our superpower, to join forces and to understand that we're not outnumbered, we're just unorganized, right? So it's just
Mm.
about organizing, because the problems and the issues are systemic, right? And going back to the Nickelodeon aspect and the Scientology aspect, is you're talking about movie studios, you're talking about commoditizing childhoods, selling underage
Mhm.
kids to get ensnared in these role plays, all for the purpose of profiting, whether you're calling it Nickelodeon, Fear Factor for children, or you're calling it go get a session and get locked up against your will because someone's going to pass a video. I mean, in
Mhm.
Scientology, they were creating content. Like, people don't understand that Scientology is obsessed with creating content. All they do all day long is video recorded. Is it perfect? Someone's always coming and editing. Oh, you didn't say this right. You didn't say this part like this. It was all acting, right? Acting in
Yeah.
disgusting, unthinkable, indefensible ways. Why in the hell are children being used in those role plays? So it's always giving the same shit with a different air freshener that we always talk about. It's
Yeah.
like it's
I
these
really.
pyramid schemes where
Mhm.
kids are told that they are not kids, that they're part of this machine,
Mhm.
and they always pretend that it's like, oh, we're doing you such a big favor. We're gonna make you a star. Don't you want to be a star? And you know what? It's like they didn't want to make a kid a star. They were exploiting the kid's
Yeah.
look. They were
Mhm.
exploiting the kids' vulnerabilities. Oh, are the parents really going to go with this? How far can we push it? Oh, this one's approved. This one passes the qualifications. Aren't you so lucky to be selected?
Mhm.
Aren't you so lucky to become a multimillionaire? We're going to make you a multimillionaire. Who was making the money in Nickelodeon? The actors or the studio?
Mm.
Right? So
Yeah.
we have the same shit with a different type of air freshener. And then all of a sudden, these ones called it religion. So you know what that afforded them? Being insular AF. Because now
Mhm.
no one could go in unless they were fully vetted. You can still get into Nickelodeon. I'm not saying that they're the exact same thing. Nickelodeon's not claiming to be a religion, but they are offering roles for children to play
Mhm.
where we've seen it now with the documentary. What was being broken all the time? Oh, turns out the laws. Why? Because children were being worked 15 hours. Oh, we really need to get the scene straight because Dan doesn't like it. Dan wants you like this. Dan wants you like that. Well, where else
Mhm.
were we being told that 24/7, 365 inside the Scientology hotels?
Yeah, and Serge, I would say that all of these things they correlate because we're talking about the rights of children. So the UN created the Convention on the Rights of the Child,
Hmm.
and the US unfortunately has not ratified that, but it has been ratified by every country in the world. Every other country in the world besides the US agrees that there are basic rights for children. And those things are those rights are all the things that are being violated. So the US is allowing children to be on a mass scale to be taken advantage of, and it just cannot continue. And we see that across the board. We see that through the troubled teen industry that's been recently highlighted in a fantastic documentary called The Program. And then we have tons and tons of stories that are coming out right now. What's really being highlighted is what's happening to kids and what has been happening to kids for decades. And I cannot believe that it's taken us until 2024 for the world and society to wake up and be like, oh yeah, that's happening. It is happening. It's been happening everywhere. We need to stop it. We need to do more about it. We need to have protections in place for children, and we need to recognize that they have certain rights that should not be violated. They must never be violated, and we need to act in the best interests of the children. And I think it would be a really great idea. I was just looking through some PDFs online, but you can get a sort of a simplified version of the children's rights. And I think it would be a really great idea to have that printed, in your family home, so that your children. So I'm going to do that. I was like, that's a great idea. I've written a note for myself. I'm going to go and print that off. There's because actually the actual convention on the rights of the child is quite lengthy,
Hmm.
and it's listed as article numbers, and so it's difficult to kind of pass it over to a child. So if we can kind of like simplify it into a snapshot form that they can easily absorb, because we want children to understand their rights from as early an age as they are able to understand it. And one of the rights that they have is to be able to have a say in the things that affect them.
Hmm.
That's really important. I mean, God, if you knew that when you were a kid, how much would that have changed? If people had allowed that for you, how much would that have changed your life? So let's start as early as we can to get our children to understand that they have these rights. Let's do it within our homes, you know, because that's
Well,
our superpower. That's our power as a parent.
that is so true, Miriam. And, you know, it's like at the end of the day, when you really understand the unthinkable abuse and betrayal of L. Ron Hubbard and all his proteges, in terms of like, parents could have been doing right and have common sense, but due to the fact that they were consuming unthinkable extremist rhetoric, right? Because that's what it's called.
Yes.
Extremist rhetoric exists. You could call it ISIS, you could call it Scientology, you could call it whatever extreme, whatever extreme, whatever extreme you want to give us. It's the same shit with a different air freshener.
Absolutely.
And no child is safe in the hands of some extremist. It's like, it's literally called child terrorism. They terrorized us. It was terror. It was a terroristic operation, right? It's like you keeping children locked against their will, bondaged, unable to move in hotel rooms for hours and hours on end, and you video record that.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about this. It's like we're talking about Ruby Frankie and Jody Hildebrand, you guys. They were recording it. They were writing it down. They were figuring it out. They were keeping notes. And it's like those kids ended up looking like prisoners of war when they rescued themselves. It was a 12-year-old to rescue himself. They were about to be abducted to another multi-million-dollar ranch that they were about to go buy in Arizona, so they could even be more isolated. And it's like you're talking about, yes, I mean the rights of a child should be considered as the UN. I couldn't agree with you more, and I think we need to, again, it's like we have to get this information out to the people so that what is being done is being called what it is, because everyone gives it this benefit of the doubt, this blanket benefit of the doubt. And you know what? There's not a lot of benefit of the doubt when you take away the delusion, and it's the delusion of those parents that put all those kids in harm's way. It doesn't matter. My mother and your mother, from completely two different parts of a continent, even, how did they end up punishing us in the exact same sadistic way? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Documenting it just like Jody and Ruby. Oh, today I'm really getting the tone level raised of my child. That's what they called it. But what was getting the tone level raised? Locking them up for 5 hours to write out a lower condition because they really had betrayed the group?
And what about writing up, children having to write up overts and withholds? It's the same thing as what is exactly what was going on. And Ruby writes about that in her journal. And she's like, she has to get the evil out of these children. And that's really that one thing is really present right from the beginning of the sort of videos that are available, where it sort of started on 8 passengers, as in it started that the public were able to view what was happening and becoming concerned with what was going on. That there was these punishments of the children to correct them. I mean, that was my childhood experience. And we'll deep dive into more detail on that in another video. But right now, like, we're just saying more sort of surface things, because I do like to be really, really like specific when I'm trying to compare a topic, especially. But like I watched. So I had kind of avoided, as in I'd seen, like, on a surface level, I'd seen like some headlines. I kind of got the gist of what the story was. But I didn't dive into it because I knew that was going to be heavy. And I started watching the videos yesterday and I was bawling my eyes out. I just like, that image of that boy on that doorstep is just, it's forever seared in my mind. forever. And I think for the collective memory of anybody who watched that footage. And then after I stopped crying, I was like, okay, I'm going to keep going and hit play again. And then I began to understand the details of the story and what happened. And I was just I was like, oh, well, that's same. Like there's just so many correlations that I just couldn't even believe it. I was like, it's crazy. I mean, the words are different, but the meaning is the same.
And that's really what it counts, right? Like we're talking about, it's like we're not having to consider the words, you guys, because the words are the delusion. That's what propped up the delusion. And, like we said, there are some receipts that came out on the type of conversations that these women were having, even after being arrested. They were arrested, they were in jail, they were caught, their homes were raided, the cops had all the evidence, handcuffs, a vault. Well, guess what? What's in the Coachman building where Marty Rathbun was interrogating me? I was interrogated inside a bank vault by Marty Rathbun, stuck, locked against my will for hours, unable to move my hands, unable to move at all. Him asking disgusting, deranged questions. And it's like, what? Marty Rathbun is not Jody Hildebrand on steroids? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Jody Hildebrand had the benefit of the doubt before getting caught with all that evidence to pretend that, hey, I'm just a therapist here. I'm just a therapist, right? Marty Rathbun doesn't have that plausible deniability. Marty Rathbun was following a manual, which has been published, which has been on the public record for everyone to see. But we always get told, oh no, L. Ron Hubbard is an American-born god. Didn't you know that a convicted felon could be pitched in America as an American-born god? And as long as the New York Times made it a bestseller, then it must mean that the New York Times editorial board is the one to trust. And your mom is buying the New York Times bestseller in Australia. My mom is buying the New York Times bestseller in Mexico. And then all of a sudden they feel very important, part of something very important. Oh, we're members of this hotel. They chose us. They really hand selected was the pitch. Oh, you can only be here if you're hand selected. That's why this BS about how they want to clear the entire planet is BS. They were never looking to clear they just were hand selecting people. Oh, you qualify. Oh, and going back to the selection process of Nickelodeon, it's like people were being auditioned, and then if they passed all these things that just between Dan Schneider and his team knew that they had to pass in order to qualify to be the kid that really is going to be exploited in front of everyone's eyes without anyone racing nothing, just being, oh, yep, that's fine, because unfortunately, the acting parents are just as complicit and as idiotic as the Scientology parents, as these Mormon mothers that are literally called out. Imagine, is Rudy Frankie and Jody the only Mormon moms that do this? Is this just something? I mean, Jody was lauded as the big, great therapist to go visit.
Yeah.
So if this woman is doing that, is she the only one? No one
That's
else?
my question as well. Right. That's my question as well. And then also, well, we had the show, like the YouTube channel or whatever it was, that she was doing 8 Passengers, and she was promoting this type of like punishment, withholding from children, so deprivation, and that, and so people must have been, I mean, I don't know, were there people following her and also practicing the same things with their children? Because, and then and then Jody and all the rest of it, they were selling this stuff, like this is what they were handing out to parents as a guide of what to do to their children, that it was the right way. And this was in the this, and they were saying that this is what's best for the kid, right? And they were saying essentially this is the greatest good. right? Like they were saying that that the child needed it. Yeah, that they needed it for their own good. And then on top of that as well, the other thing that was going on was this expectation of responsibility that was way high above the actual capabilities of that child in each circumstance for their age appropriate responsibilities.
Mhm.
This expectation that a 3-year-old child is going to just get themselves up and get ready for school on their own without being woken up. It's just insane. And that definitely, that extreme level of responsibility was placed on us as children. No, you're not a child, you're an adult. I mean, this was our childhood. And so there is so many correlations. It's insane.
So it's a playbook that's being called out, right? Because it's a
Mm-hmm.
playbook that has been made available for people that want to go play dumb. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not born with basic humanity, then miss us with your delusions. It's like I always make this example of, it's like if a lion, if a lioness would go and throw a little tiny cub to go
Mm-hmm.
fend for himself and go grab some food, we would
Yes.
be horrified. No, it's against nature, is what it's called.
Mm-hmm. Because
So
what would
more,
happen is that baby cub would go out amongst the wildebeest, and then the wildebeest would just like run over it, and that's what happened to us. We were just thrust into these situations that we shouldn't have been experiencing at that young age. And as well, similar, and I haven't done a deep dive into the P Diddy stuff by any means, but I only just saw like some surface level stuff. I know that some of the content is that the children that he took with him to these places were exposed to things that they should never have seen or experienced. I mean, again, we're ignoring the rights of the children. I mean, yes, it's abusive, of course, right? But if we understood and acknowledged that the children have rights, we wouldn't allow those things to happen in the first place. We wouldn't allow them to be placed in these situations where they could experience these, have these damaging experiences. But no one, the parents involved and no one involved honored the child's rights or looked at the best interest of that child in every
well, and it's
case.
like these people
Mhm.
never meant to do that. These people never, like Jody and Ruby, were never giving an F. I mean,
Of
she had
course.
8 kids, and
Hmm.
before you knew it, she was doing it on YouTube for entertainment.
Mm,
So they felt
yeah.
very confident about airing, and imagine how much was edited out, and imagine that she started making mistakes.
Hmm.
Only
Hmm.
reason she got caught because she started telling on herself, and then finally the petition got written, and then finally YouTube took her platform off. But imagine how long
Hmm.
she had it. She was, it's like, and that's the whole thing with these, social media giants now, because now they're the Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon
Hmm.
is going to be defunct. Nickelodeon is being called out for what it is. There's no way they survive this disgusting,
They cannot, and they
horrific,
should not.
unthinkable. It's like it's business models built backwards. So you're really
Yes.
going with the pitch that the children were supposed to. How does this work? Make it make sense. Why are all
Hmm.
crimes being committed?
Hmm.
And then it all gets glossed because there's a lot of money. So it must not be that it's a scam. And you know what? It is
Hmm.
a scam because
Right. And Serge, as well, you've got contracts being signed by parents, the child not understanding the extent of what's being signed, confidentiality agreements, being tied to things that they cannot possibly consent to. They just cannot consent to it. So there's got to be, I mean, I understand like you are going to have children in media, but or in like as in, in filmmaking and that sort of thing, but there just has to be more advocacy for the child. And maybe that then comes along with it that, each child that is on a set, they also have a child advocate who understands and is trained in matters like understanding the child's rights.
I mean,
Someone, because a parent isn't like, if a parent, they're not equipped to navigate legal paperwork necessarily. So then how can the parent even, I just think that there just has to be tons more advocacy and protection of the child in those environments.
People need to sober up to the facts. And the fact is that, yes, children's creativity, we were just speaking about this, right, should be nourished. They should have that for themselves. They should do that in their school. They should do that in where they're not getting exploited, because the business model is broken. It's broken. It doesn't create children that have a shred of autonomy, that have a shred of, you know, it's like your development in years get pushed because these adults are pretending that the kids are adults. And it's like, I cannot think of any other business where I, as a child, was making an organization up to $100,000 in a week. A child, 15 years old, right? $100,000 was my quota to be making by Debbie Cook. Okay, so this week, $100,000, that's your target.
Yeah.
In what other business can you have that happen? Oh, just in a Hollywood studio. Oh, this week we need those ad dollars. So yes, in this week, make sure you don't get sick, make sure you don't miss, make sure you don't, you know, all this responsibility that's not, I'm sorry, what child can take on that responsibility? There isn't one, because stop pretending that children can have superpowers. They don't have them. They don't have them. We would know. We were told ad nauseum that we had superpowers. And you know what? We did it. We acquiesced. We tried to do the best we could, but you know what? That didn't land us in any good place to be. Inside these disgusting conglomerates, commercial buildings and hotels is where the trafficking happens. Breaking news. So for all the people that want to pretend that it doesn't, it does. So let the children figure out their artistic shit and just don't make it a thing where you're using them, because again, we'll go back to the social media. What is social media? Why is it creating all these problems? Because these kids cannot even be themselves. Now they're like, my friend's more popular than me. I suck. I wanna and it's like, there's congressional hearings, Mark Zuckerberg being confronted.
Oh no. I'm frozen in like the worst way.
You know, you look like you're doing TR0. I can still hear you.
Should I jump out and come back in? Because we gotta sort that out. Yeah, let me do
it. And we have Mark Zuckerberg, you guys, with all these kids developing all these horrific things, because what are kids going for? Oh, let me be popular. It's really gonna work out for me to be popular. Like, you know, the drug that America has been selling is fame. And fame is a drug. They package it, they put it in a package, and then they go for it. And you know what? Leave the kids out of that game. The fame game is not a child's game. We would know. In the hotel, they told us, yeah, look at Tom Cruise. Look how great it's working out for him. So, you know, we're saying no to that type of fame game, you guys. That's what we're saying. That stresses children out and is not good for their mental health. I mean, that's what's literally being said by all these child actors. I mean, I'm sure some of them did better. Some kids cope better. Some kids got abused less too, right, guys? Like, it's not like every single kid got the exact same level of abuse, but plenty of them do. Plenty of them do have the side effects. There we go.
I'm back. Thanks everyone for waiting. Yes, what were you talking about?
Well, we're just talking about this aspect of these role plays being inappropriate for kids. Don't make kids work. Don't put them to work. Don't put responsibility. Just don't do that. You know, figure it out another way. You're an adult. You have faculties. You have brains. You can figure out what else you could do. But maybe not try to ensnare kids in contracts. I mean, again, it's like all these kids that got scammed on contracts. How were they supposed to know at 8 years old what was in their best interest? They thought they were doing
no way.
Oh, we selected you. Oh, you think you're special? You're special because we selected you. You passed our approval process, which had to go through all these layers, and we really saw your talent. Well, isn't that great that they saw our talent? You see what I'm saying? And it's like it's where we go to this point of
I mean,
commercialization.
isn't that part of grooming? Like, I feel like that's part of grooming too. Like, you're so special. You're so special. Like, I'm gonna take care of you, and then meanwhile, like, they're not taking care of you. Um, yeah, it's false promises. I mean, it's incredibly destructive. I'm sure, you've got the destruction of trust, these huge betrayals. I mean, yeah. Like, let's
There's
look
so
at
many
Britney
boundaries that
Spears.
got crossed. It's so many
Mhm.
boundaries that got crossed. Like the common sense goes out the window and then everything else comes in. And it's like once the common sense is out the window, it's
Yeah.
out the literal window because everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid, everyone's doing the same thing, going back to the grooming. Everyone's being groomed, everyone's being approved, everyone really got with the program, everyone is doing it. So if everyone does
Mhm.
it, then what? It's legal, it's okay, it's acceptable. If everyone, and I just posted this on my community tab, you guys, if everyone
Mhm.
commits aggravated child abuse, which in Florida is statute 827.03, then you know what? Don't do it. Because
Mhm.
per the law, per this statute, if everyone is committing aggravated child abuse,
Yeah.
and you might not be in a great place. You might not
Mhm.
be in this, experience that you're telling yourself that you're having. If your children are part of the equation,
Mhm.
and it's your job as a parent to put them somewhere to make sure they don't have the faculty to make the judgment to is that adult want to have something to, you don't smell predators, you don't, everyone's your friend when you're a kid,
Mhm.
everyone's your friend, everyone's so easy, oh my god, look at them, don't you want to be like
Mhm.
that, don't you want to be with them? And then especially in the case of ours, I mean, we were told ad nauseum the people that were wearing the military uniform were our biggest friends and our biggest saviors, and they're the ones that are going to really save a world. So they were pitched like that. And believe you me, Miriam and I bought the pitch. This is
Mhm.
what we got.
Absolutely. There's a really great metaphor, and this is also really helpful to use this metaphor when you're talking to children because it creates a sort of visual framework. But it's called the shark cage metaphor,
Hmm.
and the idea is that the sort of the bars that are around you. If you imagine you're in the ocean and you're in like a let's say you're a tasty fish and there's sharks swimming around.
Hmm.
Well, what you'd like to have is some bars that are around you to protect you that stop the shark from coming in and biting your arm off or anything like that. And
Hmm.
so each of these bars are actually your rights. And they're the protections that are in place and they're your boundaries. So anyways, there's a lot that I can go into on that, but basically, yes, understanding your rights is the first thing. Now, when you're a child, you don't understand these things yet, and you're not able to. You're vulnerable. You're not able to create those bars yourself. Okay, it does get over time and as age appropriate. Those bars will strengthen. You'll begin to strengthen those things for yourself, but prior to that and until you are able to put and hold those bars in place, then your caregivers, so whether that's your parents or a suitable caregiver, are supposed to be doing that for you. Their job is to fortify those bars, that shark cage for you to prevent the sharks from getting to you. And so it starts with understanding rights. You see, when a child grows up not understanding their rights, then then there's no bars. There's no bars around them, and if no one is enforcing that protection around them, then again, there's no bars. They're just swimming in this ocean, and that's it. Um,
Well,
yeah.
and I love that you brought that up. And I think that this is why we should actually do a public service announcement and read out this warning that I put out on my community tab today. A dire
Mm,
warning to Scientology parents: aggravated child abuse is not a religious act. Listen up, Scientology parents. The recent conviction of Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke for aggravated child abuse should serve as a chilling wake up call. This is a wake up call. Like, wake up right now. Despite what you've been led to believe, subjecting your children to such horrific treatment is not, repeat, not a religious protected activity. For far too long, Scientology executives and parents alike have hidden behind a cloak of faith, using it as a shield to justify their heinous actions. Well, consider that shield shattered AF. The law does not recognize child abuse as a protected religious practice, and that means neither should you all. This isn't about holding a couple of individuals accountable. It's about dismantling a toxic culture of impunity that has allowed to flourish within the ranks of complicit Scientology executives and parents donating their kids to be abused.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the harm inflicted upon innocent children in the name of your so-called religion. So let's have this be a clear warning. The days of sweeping these atrocities under the rug are over. The spotlight is on you, and the world is watching. It's time to face the harsh reality and take responsibility for your actions, actions that have systemically and institutionally placed kids in untenable, indefensible positions. Time to reevaluate the pitch that you decided to follow to the letter that came from a convicted felon, L. Ron Hubbard, that managed to normalize trafficking and abuse of minors at an industrial size scale.
Yeah. It wasn't a religious experience for us. And there is no religious exemption from being prosecuted for criminally abusing children. There's no one is religiously exempt. It's not like you cannot, you're still going to get convicted, as we've seen with Ruby and Jody. And so even though they believed, who fucking cares about what you believed if you were harming children? No one cares. Shut up. Shut up about your beliefs. If you are hurting children, then you need to stop. And if you've done it, then you need to be criminally prosecuted, or whatever judgment needs to come your way. And that's just what needs to be, that's what needs to happen. And if you have witnessed, you've covered up, you've stood back, you were involved in, you participated in, or at any level, the mass scale, the large scale of abuse towards children within Scientology, then yeah, you need to shut the fuck up, basically. Like, that's it. What you did was wrong. Stop telling us that you believed in it. You believed you were doing good. It doesn't matter that you believed whatever the fuck you believed, okay? Like, it does not matter.
Yeah, it's time to really double check that belief and then see where the facts actually land. Because the fact is, going back to the point, right? It's like, if we ourselves is taking us to our midlife to have complete breakdowns, to even be able to deal with this, and we're having to come forward with these unthinkable, disgusting things that nobody wants to come and talk about it. And I know, Miriam, I've been reacting to your videos, and there's a part where John Atuk keeps talking about how, oh, you were brought to America all the way from Switzerland to talk to the aftermath. And it's like, do you understand that you weren't looking
from Australia?
Yeah. You weren't looking to be brought. Like, you're not looking for the trip to come back to where you were as a child, because you're making this about yourself. If you're making it about yourself, you couldn't even come up for air and advocate for you, but it's like, as we've talked so many times.
I wasn't going there for a holiday. I was going there to tell my story, which was extremely uncomfortable. Extremely uncomfortable. In fact, I was just reviewing the transcript, which is probably confidential. I don't think I can release it, but so I'm going to just respect the confidentiality in that. But I will say that there are so many times in there that I use the words, I'm not comfortable, I'm uncomfortable, I'm not comfortable with this. Like, the experience was uncomfortable for me in my body. It was just like, no, I didn't want to do that, but it felt important enough for me to do. It felt important enough for me to do.
For anyone to think that we want to, it's the whole indignity of it. And it's like, how dare you put it that we want to have a moment of paying attention. It's like, if this was not happening to a single more child, if all 21 and unders are out of the hotels, I close this account, and I never talk about this ever.
Yeah.
I don't have to go and talk about something disgusting that happened to me as a child over and over. But in what world are we any different if we were sitting here not making the points that would have kept us safe as children, given that no one inside of that hotel that has access to see the barbarities taking place will raise a single red flag because everything is so well groomed. Everyone there agreed it was all okay. It's children who are the fair game of these adults, you guys. And there's no defense for making children fair game in a game of adults at best. If Jody and Frankie wanted to whip each other up and tie each other up and keep themselves in disgusting situations, all they had to do was leave the children with other adults that weren't going to be doing that. The children should have not been anywhere near that disgusting behavior. But yet, again, in America, they make this big song and dance. Oh, we really care if the child doesn't save themselves, you know? And it's like, I don't even care about the police. I don't even care about the neighbors. How much information had already existed? Don't just care for the fact. Don't just care because it's like those kids gave us a voice. Like we couldn't escape when we were 12 years old. There was nowhere to escape. The Clearwater police compromised AF. Mike Rinder was the contact person, and I released that and I put that on a literal receipt. Who was the contact person at the Clearwater police? Mike Rinder. So what in the hell was I going to do to the same police that was being not only were we told that the police is BS, that the police is going to screw you, you're going to be put in a mental institution, and should be really scared. And at 12 years old, we believed it because all mandated reporters were made the boogeyman. Psychiatrists, mandated reporters, boogeyman. Therapists, mandated reporters, boogeyman. Police officers, mandated reporters, boogeyman. Teachers, mandated reporters, boogeyman. Because if you're not with the Scientology teacher, then you really have to be careful about what you tell them that's going on at home. I mean, even trained on us. Like, don't tell them about this and don't tell them about that. They don't understand it. They don't know the technology. And it's like technology you were applying, and that technology is flawed AF. It's not theology. At least Jody and the other idiot have that plausible deniability. They have a book that says this and says that, and they spew out all this garbage. It's like they can't really blame the book. Our parents can blame the book. Our parents have that going for them. Oh, you don't like what we're saying? Blame the book. Oh, that wasn't in your nature to do it? Then blame the book. You have a book. It says in that book that is great. And, you know, you can blame also Mike Rinder, since he's the one that literally grabbed L. Ron Hubbard out of his grave, dug him up, pitched him to the IRS as an American-bred god that really had a great, amazing technology to really save our world. And that was all contingent on children becoming enslaved. So when we say that child trafficking is state-sanctioned, literally the IRS is giving write-offs to self-admitted felons. So why are self-admitted full-blown felons, the likes of your father, that were given safe space, provided a safe, literal space? Imagine the type of depraved man you have to be inside of that hotel and go, oh, you know what that man just confessed to? Oh, yeah, that he was doing exactly what he was doing to his underage child. And you know what he needs? A safe space. So we really like write it down and really like take the time to really analyze everything, because that's what. That's going to be what exactly? The needle's going to float, and all of a sudden the technology does seem pretty magical to all of these self-admitted felons. Because you know what? Try go to an actual lawyer's office and see if they offer you the service of floating a needle as you admit to felonies, and see that service nowhere on their list. So, you know, it's either one thing or the other, Miriam, because you know what? If Scientology has the technology to literally have you float felonies away, then why in the hell are attorneys not flocking and grabbing officers out of there and being like, you know, I need to have you, let's add you to my firm. Johnson and an auditor from Scientology that can float your needle and literally make you get rid of the felony. Because you know what? No, don't worry about it. As long as you told us everything, we have it on video recording here. Your needle floated, everything went away. You're great, you're wonderful. That happened because you were confused in another lifetime. Don't you remember? That's what we came up with. I mean, that's the type of questioning that your father was afforded. And I would know, Miriam, a child doing these handlings on adults. Imagine
So well, absolutely. And one of the things that like, for example, on the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force, and the sort of the key thing is that they're doing is the false purpose rundown, where they're going back to, tracing back these evil acts that you did. And then they're finding the source of it. And the source of that is some misunderstanding. And one of the things that my mother said to me, she said, this is later on in an email. She said, usually you'll find that there was some misunderstanding. And if that just gets cleared up, then it's all good. And I'm just like, what did I misunderstand about any of it? Like, it's not, And so, but that's what they believe in terms of the perpetrator. Like, that's my mother saying that if he just could clear this up, it was just a little misunderstanding that he had, then it would all be all right, and he'd be corrected and he'd be all good. And what I'm saying is that he committed a crime. He committed a crime, and then he committed the crime, and then he committed the crime, and he committed the crime, and he kept on fucking committing that crime. And he damaged me, and he hurt me.
Again, it's like facilitation. They made themselves pawns in a scheme. The scheme
my mother is also... And my mother is also a criminal. She also committed crimes against me because she knew of a felony and did not report that felony, and she assisted in the cover-up of that felony over a period of decades.
Right, Miriam? Because even before you ending up in that situationship for yourself, imagine you had already been uprooted out of where? Out of your home. You had no home. You were in this communal, disgusting child trafficking quarters. Cadet means nothing. Cadet is a euphemism for a child trafficking quarter. They were motels. They were run down, roach infested, that do fit the poster of what child trafficking is, that the LAPD goes around pitching. Oh, this is what child trafficking looks like. Well, imagine that we literally grew up in those digs thanks to Mike Rinder and his posse. All of them. It's not just you, Mike Rinder. You're literally the one here. But imagine you had how many enablers telling you you're great. You're such a great executive. You're so wonderful. You're really going to save a world. Well, were you saving a world, or were you enslaving kids? Because you can be doing both. So which one was it? Because in 2024, you're still pitching this as you were saving a world, and you really cared and you really wanted to do something about it. Imagine you child trafficked your own kids, and then you went around making other parents do it, because the more parents you recruited to do the same thing, the more you felt right about your decision. Or double check on that decision. Double check if all of them do it. Going back to what we just read for all of you guys to know, it's like you're committing aggravated child abuse and you're doing it at scale, at an industrial size scale. And that's supposed to be very protected, because what again? Because you were recording it, because you were transcribing it, because you were getting intimately implicated in everything there was to be known about it. So make that make sense really quick. And since it was all the pitch of L. Ron Hubbard, I'm sure you can make it make sense really, really quick, because you can point out to the reference where it says, well, L. Ron Hubbard told me to do it here. So I did it, and I did it since 1963 to 2007. And then I left. And then, I really, came clean about what, Mike Rinder? You always are part of a withhold, but not the rest. And you always misdirect. And you always tell half-truths. It's all half-truths, and it's all, what do I say about this? How do I say it about that? And putting yourself in a position where you really come across as the expert at what? At child trafficking kids on an industrial size scale? In what world are you different from Ghislaine Maxwell, as if you're not that on steroids?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The thing that is so problematic for Mike Rinder is that he was involved in all of the key monumental things that solidified the structure of Scientology into what it is today. The power that Scientology has today was in part because of Mike Rinder's participation. Number one, that he was involved in them gaining tax-exempt status. He was a huge player in that.
Right, David, Marty Rathbun, and
Exactly.
Mike Rinder. They've
Correct.
this is their words, you guys. So before you go, oh, you guys just have it out for these three. Well, David, no, because David has never talked to us. We're too lowly for David.
Yeah.
He won't
Well,
talk.
only recently, he's been calling me recently. He's like, "Can you go after Mike Rinder?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, David." No, like, come on. Yeah, no. But also Serge, when I grew up as a kid, I saw that event. I watched those three people, the videos that played out on stage, showing them showing up at the IRS, you know, and all this. Like it was like a documentary about their experiences. And all I saw was Marty Rathbun, David Miscavige, and Mike Rinder. And that's been branded in my mind since I was a little kid. And then I continued to see Mike Rinder up on stage, and he was this powerful figurehead. And he had a ton of prestige then when he was in Scientology. He has a ton of prestige now that he's outside of Scientology.
It was not prestige. It was slaves. He had a ton of slaves. These are fake royals. They deemed themselves royals. They deemed themselves royalty. Oh, we're part of the royals here. We're really the higher ups here. We're the ones that have a ton of child slaves running around for us. So that's what it took for them to have this deranged delusion, right? But it's like there's no conscience of repudiating any of that. There's no admissions of that. There's always the same old narrative. David Miscavige did it all, and we had no idea about anything. And you know what? You did have a clue. And it was a lot of you, because this is a racketeering scheme. This is called, there's a ton of conspirators, like you said, your mother, my mother, Miriam. And going back to the point, it's like your mother had already committed the felony by the time she was trafficking you from one country to another to be what? Neglected, which is aggravated child abuse, for you to be, just thrown there and then, I'm going to go do something very important. See you later. I don't care.
Right.
No, it's like that. The felony was already there. Then that all these other SA things happened to us. That's so late on the chain, even of how we even got there in the first place. Like, why were we in harm's way? Why were we so vulnerable as kids? Why were we such easy prey? Well, where were our mothers put us in the middle of that jungle and then said, survive. See you later.
Absolutely.
On the flip side. Well, you know what? We're at the flip
good
side.
luck.
We're at the flip side here, and you are seeing us, and you are seeing us that we did survive. No thanks to you all, but it's fine. We're not pressed about that. We're pressed that this is still being done to kids as we speak. That's what everyone here in the chat, 236 people on mine, and I don't even know how many on yours right now. That's what we're about, because you know what? Children do need advocates. If they don't have them themselves, if their parents are turned against them, if their parents are told that child aggravated abuse is a religious experience they're having for themselves, guess what happens at an industrial size scale? If the parents decided to check their critical thinking skills at the door, because they were told that, they were not told that. They were not, L. Ron Hubbard said, don't have a critical thought, because otherwise you have a misunderstood word or you have committed a withhold. So who signed up to be told that 367 24/7 ad nauseum repeated? You outsourced your critical thinking skills to a hotel. So deal with the literal legal ramifications of that. Because it all had consequences, and it had consequences to your kids. We don't give an F what happened to you as an adult. Literally, we don't have the bandwidth, don't have the care, could not care less. Do you think I care what Jody Hildebrand had to go through to end up in the position she ended up with? Do you think I shed a tear at night thinking, oh my God, Jody really had it bad? Must have been that she had it bad. We had it really bad. And what? We're not here enslaving kids. We're not here doing what was done to us. It's called, you do have a choice. Is called you do have freedom that you don't have to pay for. It's called make the choice that you need to be making as a consenting adult today, that I am, no matter how broken you are, you have to make the right choice right now. So
yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
and you
Yeah,
know, it's
absolutely.
available for all of them. It's available for all people. It's available for all people, that free choice. So, you know, it's time to repudiate what in the hell you have done as a collective. There is, stop trying to be like, there's no hierarchy. No one has a shred of hierarchy here. You're all as guilty as David Miscavige. How about that? No one's not as guilty as him. What, you didn't apply the L. Ron Hubbard technology? David is not as guilty to the fact that he never had children and he never exposed his own children. He used other people's children, but he never exposed his own.
Yeah, and let me say that one comment that I've seen a lot is like, "Oh, how can you criticize Mike Rinder? He's a victim just like you are." And it's like, Mike Rinder was not a victim just like I was. Mike Rinder didn't experience child sexual abuse, period. Okay. And Mike Rinder received an education. He left his family home, or his home country at least, to join a cult when he was, I believe, 18 or 19 years
18.
old.
Yeah.
18? Right.
Mhm.
So, I mean, okay, so that you're an adult. Okay. And so, and he had an identity for himself. He grew up as a child, was able to form an identity for himself. This is the identity that he chose for him. I never got a choice. And going back to the rights of the child, you have a right to your own identity. You have the right to not be removed from your culture, from your home country. You have a right to the details of your birth. For example, I didn't even know my full name. I didn't have, my mother told me my name was something else, and it wasn't that. She told me I didn't have a middle name. But then I eventually, years later, I got my birth certificate and I had a middle name. So it's like this is all in there. All of these things are in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. You have the right to your own identity. You have the right to say. You have the right to have a say in the things that affect you, and you have the right to to pursue art and all these sorts of things that should be nurtured. When a child is removed from their home at such a young age, from the structures that are around them, of familiarity, the things that give them identity, their culture, and they are removed from that, and they are placed into a building where they kept the children. They kept the children there. They didn't look after them. That's why I say that this is a place where the children were kept. That's what I call it, because we were placed there and we were told that we couldn't be individuals. We had to be a member of the team, that we had to do things for the group. We had to think and act in the best interests of the group and not in the best interests of ourselves. All of our rights were taken away from us, and we are stripped of the things that made us who we are. And that is a complete violation. It's a violent and intimate violation of a child. Mike Rinder did not experience those things. So stop telling me that Mike Rinder had my experience, because he did not have my experience. His identity was not stolen from him at a very young age. Okay?
I think that's such a great point,
Yeah.
Miriam, because again, it's like we're talking about our trauma, our deepest trauma is in those formative years, is in those below 18. After 18, you know what? The shitty things happen to me, yes. But it's what
But you
happened
were
to me.
already in there. You were brought into that
What happened
situation
to me before that.
before
It's
that.
what happened to
Yeah.
me before that. Because you know what?
Yeah.
Much lesser things happen after. The older you got, the more power you had, right? The more you couldn't be manipulated, the more, but it's like in those formative years, and in your case, they remove you from your house and all of that. And it's like, and they're getting through breaking of, your family through your mother being literally,
Exactly.
seduced to think that she's very important and she's part of something that mattered. I mean, I thought it was very
Well,
interesting. Brought
right.
up.
They removed my mother from my home. You can't do that to a child. That's in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Do not remove a parent from a child. Do not do that. That is the child's right. I have the right to have my mother in my home to protect me.
But
That's
the
my
problem was
right.
that your mother agreed.
Exactly.
So that's, it's like our protection.
Right.
Just there were
And that's what
nothing
I'm
else to protect us, because once they compromised
exactly.
and kneecapped our parents, once they made them complicit in the scheme, once they identified with being complicit in a scheme and they didn't want to backtrack, once they completely normalized putting us in harm's way and thinking nothing of it, then it was too late, because
right. So what they did
already then. And the
so
fact
going
is,
back,
again,
sorry.
right now is where the kids are going through the exact same. There's not been a single safety guard rail implemented since anybody left those hotels. Not even us, right? Like, not even everything we've said here, nothing. Those kids are still audited, sec checked, ethics handled, brought into the Sea Org. Parents that qualify still have minors in there. It's complete BS that they don't do it. If they know that they can qualify and they know that they're not at risk, you are in. And for you, like, you know, your whole entire family was uprooted. So you were complete fair game. Seriously.
Right. So what happened is that rather than there being any caregiver around me to put these bars in place, this shark cage, going back to the shark cage metaphor, rather than those bars being put in place, those bars were annihilated, they were removed, and then they added bait to the water to get the sharks to be like, oh, is this like, everything is compounded.
Everything is compounded. I mean, and no child, I mean, yeah, you can get through it, and, you know, nature and our brains have a way of resiliency, but what nobody ever sees below us is the disabilities, the permanent disabilities, the very real permanent disabilities that were created within our nervous systems that are, you know, not reacting in the way they should be reacting. If you would have had a normal upbringing, it's fine. We'll deal with it, right? That's not what we're pressed about. It's what we're pressed about is that why should another child get to in their late 40s to realize what's been done to them? I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. You know, and I don't want parents to be ensnared in this scam. I don't want them to be turned against their own kids. It shouldn't happen. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrific tragedy. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I'm sorry it happened to you. I'm sorry it happened to me. I'm sorry it happened to all Scientology kids. You know? And those parents, they need to figure out what they've done. And it's like, use your own technology of ethics. Figure out what you did wrong. Just use that same technology. Write it down, time, place, form, and event. What you've done that is against the law. Google the law, Google aggravated child abuse, and then just see exactly what aggravated child abuse is, and then write time, place, form, an event of every single time you committed child aggravated abuse. And all of this stops for all kids there, because I guarantee you, if 100, just 100 of Scientology parents put that into affidavit form, and we had 100 affidavits of Scientology parents, I did this, I locked up my child, I paid for my child to be abused inside that hotel. They're paying for it. You know, my parents paid upwards of $50,000 for me to be trained as an auditor at age 12. You put your money where your mouth literally was. Well, you know what? That is being questioned today in the year 2024, given that there's more children being ensnared and being tapped to become auditors. That is a big problem for me. That is a big problem for you, period. It's a big problem for us that, you know, self-admitted felons are still being allowed to float a needle. It's a big problem. And if nobody else has a problem, well, you know what? Ask yourself why you don't have a problem with that, because you should be having a big problem. And if you're so numb and anesthetized with whatever willful ignorance and willful stupidity, well, you know what? Snap out of your willful stupidity and willful ignorance, giving that children are involved. Because I always go back to that same thing. I mean, Miriam, it's like, If children were not involved, why would we even have to bother anyone with this?
Yeah, I don't think we would be. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be putting my time and energy into it if these were just simply purely adult choices. Of course, of course, the adults shouldn't be abused either. Absolutely, but it's a different scale. It's a different thing because children are not adults, and they have vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities have to be taken into consideration in the discussion of this topic. And now you had Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke. Maybe you could say that Jody Hildebrandt was the source of it, like Hubbard's the source of it. But Ruby Franke is still a perpetrator of it, and she's still gone to jail. So,
well, it represents again, right, Miriam? If those two were doing it, tell me that no one else in Utah is subjecting kids to
right now,
sadistic, barbaric bondage. What it's called. We were bondage. They didn't put handcuffs on us like this, you guys, but we still had them in our hands. We could not move or leave or nothing. It will go on for hours and hours and hours on end. You know, in the case of me, from both sides, me auditing others as a child and me getting audited, it didn't matter. So we were bondage, we were strapped, and it's unthinkable, and it does need to be called out. And yes, it's an inconvenient AF truth. The IRS has so much to explain to America. In what world does the IRS have no oversight? In what world does the IRS see the millions and millions and millions of donations for hotels that provide underage kids, such as ourselves, to be used as fair game?
Yeah,
Because
and right, and Serge, I wonder what kind of statements Mike Rinder provided to the IRS. Did he say everything's fine in there? Well, he just said on John Atack he was aware of the abuses of children. So now, like this is what we're talking about. You can't have it both ways. You can't dance on this side and dance on that side and dance on this side and dance on that side. Like something is going to come. Like something is going to come for you because you just can't play with that shit. Like you just can't play with it. So,
well, and they can, as long as they get away with it, because somebody was saying it's like they don't care about kids, and it's like people do care about kids. I feel like this is a subject that is probably one of the only black and whites that any humanity could ever agree on.
I agree with that.
If you have humanity, if you don't have humanity like Jody and Hildebrand, then yes, you're still being found on phone calls blaming it on the children. Oh, they misunderstand me. The children are so evil. Quit making yourself the victim. If you were the adult in the room, you know what? Miss us with your victimhood story, because you know what? Nobody cares about your victimhood story. That's a story you're peddling to avoid being held accountable. And if you were held accountable, if you would make it stop, you could have been that hero. But how many years have we been hoping still with that glibness and naivete that we had as children? Oh, well, the adults are going to really figure it out one day.
Yes.
And, what we figured it out is with the community seeing these points and actually showing up for us and showing support and showing us that, no, we're not wrong about this and we're not crazy. And that's what they've always wanted us to feel like, oh, you're the crazy ones. You're so extreme. And it's like, they've always weaponized our emotions against us because, yes, we were rage against the dark arts, but that was rightful rage that's needed. Otherwise, they just continue peddling their goo gaga, rundown stories that are so self-serving. And again, it's like, look, if you were involved with L. Ron Hubbard, you did things that you wish you've never done. So go check on what those things are. Go write them down on a piece of paper. Figure it out. And if you were an adult, really figure it out, because it's contingent upon all adults ensnared today that they're not doing what they're doing to kids. Just that alone. Like, don't ask them for anything else. You cannot ask them. You cannot tell Shelly, leave because you're being abused. Shelly loves being abused. Breaking news to all of you. She loves being a slave. She can't get enough of being humiliated, deprecated. Literally, she just loves it. I mean, you should see how these people talk about how much they're loving it in there. And it's like, you know
Mhm.
what? You're an adult. You can't have it both ways. You can't be like, oh, I was saying that I really loved it, but I didn't mean it. Like,
Mhm.
that's not how it works with adults. You're saying it that you're loving it, then no one can come save you. That's what it's called. Like, that's why always,
Mhm.
oh, we are so hands off. We can't tell an adult what to do. Yeah, you cannot. That's right.
Mhm.
But those adults are doing things untoward to kids, things that are categorized as aggravated child abuse, including but not limited
Mhm.
to false imprisonment,
Mhm.
locking them up against their will, interrogating them in sadistic ways. That's enhanced interrogation techniques. That's called torture. Like, someone just said in the chat, is what it's called.
That's
Torturing
what it's
kids.
called.
Torturing kids is unacceptable. And you know what? It's being done at an industrial size scale thanks to the IRS in America.
Mhm.
Thanks to the IRS, they're getting a tax write-off when they do it. Imagine how
Mhm.
much the government is ensnared. And you know what? If they didn't know that, going back to the same point, Miriam, now you do know. Stop telling us
Mhm.
that everything that's available about L. Ron Hubbard on the public record is something that y'all don't want to do the due diligence on, because if you read that shit, you would understand how it all works. Seeing that nobody wants to do that type of heavy lifting and they all just want to get told how it works, you know what?
Mhm.
We didn't have that luxury. I
Mhm.
had to be trained at
Yeah.
this at 12. I had to know how it worked, or otherwise my head was going to land on a pike.
Mhm.
So I don't want for another 12-year-old to be in there being told that is their head belonging in a pike because they're missing a withhold of a disgusting self-admitted that doesn't want to admit that they're a felon. Because
Mhm.
that makes sense. It's like the type of
Well, everything's inverted. So there is this high expectation of responsibility of children. And then, but for the adults, it's like inverted so that they don't have the type of responsibility. And it's crazy to me that even in the comment section, when we're talking about these things, it's like it's that same like, oh well, let's give them a pass, they believed in it, they believe, but okay, well, so did Ruby Frankie. Like, so what that they believed, if they did the action, then that's not okay, then there's
and so did the
consequences.
Charles Manson girls that did after fully finishing their sentence, you guys, after they get removed from the environment that is
Mhm.
that is literally enabling their delusion, because that's what it's called.
Mhm.
Like, it's like, and justice is supposed to put a check mark on that, right? It's like we're just getting a shred of that through Ruby Frankie, but because prior to her, it's like you would think that child abuse didn't take place in America. Well, now thanks to her, we know that it does take place in
Mhm.
America. Thanks to her and Lori Day Vallow, now we know that yes, if parents are delusional and commit child aggravated abuse and felonies, they do go to jail. Now, let's
Mhm.
stop making the literal standard that the child has to save themselves. Because in the case of Lori Day Vallow, her children couldn't save themselves;
Mhm.
they were murdered. In the case of Ruby Frankie, she could show all of this horrible stuff on YouTube, make millions on it.
Mhm.
YouTube enabled that platform as if
Mhm.
they don't have anything to do with it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And at that time, and so this is incredible. I just mentioned before about like the negative comments, and it's a very, very, very small percentage. I want to be really clear about that because majority of the comments are from people who can see what's going on and they're interested and they're involved and they're advocating, and damn, I've had so much support way beyond I could what I could have ever foreseen or imagined. The space here is it's real people witnessing and being involved and participating in the advocacy of victims, in supporting survivors, in recognizing the crimes that happened to us, and that is still going on and still happening to other children. And that is really, really incredible. Now, what was happening with this YouTube channel when this abuse was going on, it was clear there was elements of abuse. There was clearly abuse going on in that home. And people who were viewing it, there was outrage from it, and they had begun to contact Child Protective Services. They had contacted police. They had actually created this change petition to and I don't know what the exact title of it, but was to address what was going on there. And Child Protective Services failed those children. They knew and they didn't do anything. The police did get involved, and there was something submitted to a judge to intervene, and the judge just didn't sign it or something. So the justice system failed those children. And I just want to remind for anyone who's read the 1984 George Orwell, and I just, because I've read it recently and I just love it, but there's a huge element in there that what he's saying is that the power is with the people, the power is with the proles, he says. And that's something that Eric Blair, who is George Orwell, he wanted everyone to recognize that the power is with the people. So coming back to the superpower, title of this video, superhero powers, superpowers, that this really is all of our superpower, that all of us in us, we have the ability, we have the power to change. The power is with the people. And I'm so sorry for the children that Child Protective Services failed. That is just extreme. And I believe there's an investigation into that. But yeah, it's insane. Like, the harm could have been prevented, and people did try, and they absolutely did a good job of it. But the system is not set up to quickly recognize and act. They need to see a child standing in the front of a doorstep with a camera. I mean, if that hadn't been caught on camera, would anybody be caring about this 12-year-old child? That's the atrocity here. There happened to be a security camera, a Ring camera, or whatever, a private home camera, and that was all caught on video. This child who had escaped from the abuses that he was experiencing, and he was in a emaciated condition. He clearly was visibly displaying signs of significant and prolonged physical abuse at a minimum. And so, what if that hadn't been caught on camera for the world to see? And
I'm glad you made that point, Miriam, because imagine that there's unthinkable videos of us as children. That's what these people were doing. Videos of us being interrogated, being
and the
watched.
police are saying, right, and the police are saying, well, they're a religion, so I can't go in and get that evidence. I can't go in and get those videos. I can't go in and get those folders. It's just
right.
the same.
That's where they're just playing dumb. They're just playing dumb straight to our face. So we can't get the evidence that proves that you were interrogated under enhanced interrogation techniques, under a role play that is disgusting, under, like, that's what we're sounding the alarm on about Scientology. The problem with Scientology is Scientology. What L. Ron Hubbard pitched in his books is being done as a group extended role play by all adults that signed up for said group extended role play. So that a group extended role play includes and ensnares them in a racketeering scheme. They're all literally committing crimes now together as a team. This isn't a one-off. This isn't the UN gymnastics. This isn't the Boy Scouts. This isn't where things happen in pockets of corruption. This is the whole scheme is corrupt, because the whole scheme is being run at the behest of a convicted felon's fantasy land that has nothing to do with reality, that has nothing to do with humanity. It dehumanized everyone that got ensnared in the hotel. Well, yes, boo-hoo all adults that got dehumanized because they chose to dehumanize themselves and become ensnared. That's what it's called as an adult. Make a choice and then live by the consequences. You do have the right to do whatever. The government isn't going to interfere. But if you do make choices that are clearly against the law, that put kids at risk, then that's not called your freedom. You're not free to do whatever. You're not. That's not a freedom. Freedom means There are certain protections that need to be in place, and that's what we're screaming about here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we? Oh, yeah, I was going to say. Oh.
Do you think your records still exist? Dreamscape, our records still exist. There's the amount of record, they couldn't destroy them. They couldn't touch them. L. Ron Hubbard told them not to. So if they have, they're going against their own policies. If they have, they're continuing to obstruct justice. But guess what? It's not just Miriam. It's just not me. It's every single child has a record of their abuse inside of those hotels. And that's why we keep getting told it would be so hard to prove. It wouldn't be hard. Thanks to these records, nothing is hard to prove at any time. All we need is the records, and I can tell you all the stuff that those records show they were doing. They did it with full impunity, and because they video recorded it and because they transcribed it, they're going with the pitch that it must have been that we did everything great. Well, you know what? Double check if that's the case. Because Ruby and Jody also all about, oh, let's really write it down. Oh, here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's like we are getting an insight into their mind. And these courts cannot keep playing dumb. It's like, oh, separation of church and state. Give us a bag so we can lock it inside that bag. Because it's egregious legal malfeasance what's been done to us. The fact that we signed up for billion-year contracts as kids. So the records are still very much there, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, Laura. Yay.
Jessie Hildebrand suffered the same abuse a decade ago, and not a thing was done for her. If someone stepped in, Ruby Frankie might not have happened. That's right.
Yes.
So that's exactly right. And you see, I mean, I love Jessie Hildebrand because I could, I so much connected with her story. And then you see her intelligence, right? It's like they think that we can speak like this. Like, we always get told, oh, well, you can speak to. It's like we have to. Like, there's something that happens in your brain after you've been abused that way, because it's like, what happened. You were there. You didn't ask to be there. So, of course, now after the fact, when we grew and parts of our brain developed, we are able to speak like this. And again, Jessie tried her best to protect those kids and nobody would listen to her. So very similar to us. Power and control reactions are a choice. Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly what it is, you guys. Not only do the children have paper documents, but they have video recordings. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, in Scientology, there's records of everything. And that's why I always say they don't have plausible deniability. Mike Rinder was typing. After having trafficked Jenna Miscavige, Mike Rinder went out and typed, Jenna Miscavige is trying to, what did they call it? Chew up auditors. If you ever refuse to be in those sessions, you guys, if you ever were mean to your auditor, never mind that the punishments would escalate real quick if you started acting difficult in session. Oh, this one has a withhold. This one's really unhinged. This one's deranged. So, Mike Rinder, you typed that Jenna Miscavige was chewing up auditors. So imagine that you sat there in your office typing that type of garbage, typing that type of projections on kids. Oh, they're having a problem. They're the problem. It's like, it's giving Ruby Frankie vibes. Oh, the child is the problem here. They're the devil. And then now you think that Miriam and I misunderstand you so much. Like, we don't think we misunderstand a shred of a thing. That's our problem. Our problem is we don't misunderstand. That's our problem. Our problem is that after being abused this way, you cannot play dumb, and we cannot play dumb. We cannot afford it. Our brain doesn't allow it. At this day and age, we understand, you are a father too, Mike Rinder. In what world did you go through your entire kid's life a second time and not realize what in the hell you were doing inside of that hotel was problematic AF? Because your last kids, you had nothing to do with them. So you could claim, oh, I had no idea because I was so unaware. Well, imagine you then left the hotel, had more kids, raised them, and even that didn't even make you go, oh, I was locking up kids against their will. Oh, that would be a boo-boo. Well, you don't even think it's a boo-boo. You don't think it's a problem because you know what? Everything is misunderstood and you never did anything and you never harmed a child and you've done nothing wrong and everyone misunderstands you. Very a la Jody Hildebrand. That's what she's saying too in jail. Oh my God, everyone's misunderstanding me. You have no idea how misunderstood I am. So that's what's being called out. That's what's being called out. That's what we are, gonna have to get to the bottom of, and luckily with superpowers of the truth is what it's called, right? Like, this was their superpower, Darvo. The Nye attacked, it's just Darvo all day. And our superpower today coming down is to know that we have the facts on our side, that we do not, cannot, will not stop talking about this issue until there is no kids stuck in there. So the LAPD keep playing dumb. The Clearwater Police keep playing dumb. The FBI keep playing dumb. Actually, I think the FBI needs to be bypassed by HSI, the three-letter agency that was raiding P. Diddy yesterday. So
HSI.
We don't need you at all. Bypassed by the HSI, it's a Homeland Security, but they deal with the traffic.
Wow.
Never mind that the FBI have been the ones that Mike Rinder and Claire Headley have been telling them everything about everything. And
they can't do anything.
They can't do anything because apparently the FBI is also under this idea that, children are adults and we deserved what happened to us. So, that's where we are today. It's like trafficking is a crime, and there's more and more examples being shown to everyone in the public to see how that can be a crime, how that can be prosecuted, how conspiracies are illegal in America. We pay more money to this legal system than anywhere else on earth. This is the system where legal system in America makes more money than anywhere else. It's supposed to be the best of the best. Well, you know what? We haven't seen that. We haven't seen the laws applied. We haven't seen anyone actually breaking it down and stopping what's being done to kids today. So I think that's a good way to sort of end this here.
Love it. Yeah. Love it. Does anyone have any more questions that we want to answer at all? Or?
Yeah, let's do a round of any other questions, you guys. Oh, here. We have actually 2 super chats. Let's see.
Oh, wow.
Aaron, Mike Brown, and Miriam, and everyone is out to get poor Brinder. I always say eventually you have to look at the common denominator for the real source of the problem. Thank you, Heather. I don't agree with you anymore in terms of looking for the real source of the problem, which was L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard is the common denominator. What did all these people study to get their ideas? Because they didn't have them themselves. I mean, imagine they were so stupid and so robotic that they didn't even have their own ideas. So Mike Rinder is just a robot of L. Ron Hubbard. Imagine that's nothing else. Like everything he did in his life was modeled after whatever L. Ron Hubbard told him. So I think poor Rinder. I mean, again, it's like poor Jody Hildebrand and poor Ruby Frankie, and poor Charles Manson. While we're at it, I mean, everybody has a story. I mean, it's like. Sure.
You know what's so funny too, as well, is like if you're watching that John Atack video and they're like, well, we understand. Like, I mean, basically, Mike Rinder in a roundabout way was kind of calling me like mad that I had like lost my mind or something. And John, they're both like, oh, like we acknowledge that she has had, so much trauma and blah blah blah, and it's like. Okay, I've got trauma. I'm not insane. And this taking away of a person's agency, like where Mike Rinder in an email says that Mike Brown was this instigator behind me, that he was this mastermind manipulator of me, that I'm his. And guess what? This is the one line that Scientology said about me after I did Leah Remini Scientology in the Aftermath. They didn't do videos like on me. They centered around, unfortunately, the other person that I appeared with. And that was horrific, the things that were said. Anyways, we don't want to go there, but like, but the one thing that they said was that I was a puppet for Leah Remini and Mike Rinder. And here's Mike Rinder saying I'm a puppet for Mike Brown. It's like, come on, guys. I mean, now you guys have seen me talk enough that, like, am I anybody's puppet? Like, I'm not. I'm not anybody's puppet. I have my own agency. I have my own sense of self. I have good recollection of my own experiences. I know what I'm talking about. But they want to just undermine and minimize the person and take away their power. Well, you know, again, like, this is all about the superpowers of people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, corruption was your superpower by Grinder if you really went with the L. Ron Hubbard pitch. But now double check, because, you know, accountability could be your new superpower. You actually doing something to make it stop could be your new super literal power that you wouldn't have to pay a shred of money for, you know, because like Brittany here is saying, no one's taking accountability. They're afraid to feel shame or do the work on themselves. But you two are doing hard things. Very inspiring. Well, thank you, Brittany. And yeah, I mean, I think that accountability takes work, and it's going to take time, and, you know, it needs to be confronted. I mean, the irony of how narcissists project what they are on other people. I mean, and that's the playbook, right? It's like, you know, we're trying to be sensible people, but you know, there's not a lot to work with here, because again, everything is so egregious, and everything is so systemic, and everything is so done on purpose, done with full impunity is what it's called, you guys. If Jodi Hildebrand was not doing what she was doing without doing it with impunity, she didn't misunderstand anything. She had those kids tied up. If she doesn't see that she posed a danger to them, that just goes to show you how delusional she is and how she shouldn't be trusted with kids. Scientology parents, the same thing applies to y'all. You want to lock up kids and call it that they're having a religious experience? Double check what that's called in the law with a good, competent attorney. Don't go to don't go to a glib attorney that doesn't know what in the hell they're talking about. Get counseled by a good criminal attorney that's really going to pull the string. So what were you doing? What are you asking me? What are you saying is going to happen? Who's doing what? How long does this go for? What does the child get told? What happens afterwards? How many times does it happen? There's your answers. If you have a criminal attorney that can think that quickly, by all means, hire them, because they're going to help you from ending up on the wrong side of the law, because the law does catch up to the perpetrators. Eventually, it does. Eventually, you know, they were getting away with it, but you know what? No longer are they getting away with it, because again, they can only get away with it as long as no one understands what's going on, right? It's like, what have they been doing for the last 18 years? You know, really going for this idea that I was born in a cult. America is obsessed with the word cult. Well, you know what, America? Become an obsessed, because a cult is a racketeering enterprise. It's a euphemism. It's guys, a racketeering enterprise. Oh, they're no. Are children involved? Yes or no? Yes. What are the parents doing? Are they extremists? Are they actual, like, literal extremists where they don't see with common sense? They're going, well, if the book says to lock it up, then I'm going to just do it, because you know what? It's what it is. And I'm really getting somewhere by really applying it. So check on that BS pitch, America. It's this word, this buzzword that everybody runs with. Oh, it's a cult, it's a cult, it's a cult. Culture, yes. They're all part of a culture where they all do the same thing. So if that's what you mean by cult, because you are too lazy to say the whole word, sure. But this, you know, there's all these like whistleblowers, and I'm going to type a book, and I'm going to write this up, and I'm going to write this other thing up, and you're just writing BS, because you're just trying to literally glorify literally amp up, platform the dysfunction, trying to, spew all this garbage of how it was going to make a lot of sense. You know what? It didn't make sense to us, the kids that were there. How about that? Doesn't make sense. And you know what? Now that we have that lens, now that we have that viewpoint that we didn't want to have, but we do have for ourselves today, now it doesn't make any sense. And don't try to play dumb with us, because it's not going to work. Just like what you just exactly said, Miriam. It's like, don't F me in front of me. You could do that as a child. As a child, you could F us in front of us. And we'd be like, what? What? Yeah, easy. Like children, you know what? You can tell them the sun is green. Oh, it's green? Okay, all right. Well, you're saying it's green. It looks yellow to me, but okay, I guess everyone says it's green here. And, you get in a lot of trouble.
Right.
If you do the right thing.
And they're the ones that provide me with food and sustenance. And they're the ones that provide me with a bed to sleep on at night. And so that's the thing as well, like that you're reliant on these people for your own survival. I mean, that's a huge factor. Your literal life is in these people's hands. And that's another difference that Mike Rinder didn't have in that experience. He didn't have the same experience as me. I was dependent on these people as to whether or not they would feed me a meal or not, or whether or not they would maintain a roof over my head. And that was conditional to how much I would produce. It was conditional to my behavior and whether I towed the line with them or not.
And Miriam, again, you didn't become a high-ranking executive at your 50s leaving the hotel. Another thing that you and Mike Rinder do not have in common, you left at 17. I mean, imagine you still a minor, got the F out of there. Imagine I got out of there at 21. Imagine we did get rid of that thing. We didn't want to be there. It never felt right. It always felt disgusting. We didn't understand why it felt disgusting. We couldn't understand it at the time. And again, yes, what they say, it's true. It takes you decades to figure it out. And usually you end up at roadkill. And that's what they're counting on. They're not counting on us putting ourselves together enough to be able to even have this conversation. They're counting on us never having these conversations, never, calling them out, always remaining scared because, oh my God, aren't you so scary? It's like you were scary when we were children, where everything that you came out of your mouth, we believed it. Oh, this is going to be very scary. Well, you know what? We do have attorneys. We do have lawyers. We do have entire communities that are behind us today. We are adults. We have people in our lives that protect us. We have cameras in our entire households. We have, video cameras on our body. We take every single last precaution anybody can take. So we are not effed with anymore. We are highly aware of the fact that they want to F us, but you know what? You're not going to get away with it. Now that I'm an adult, you're not going to get away with it. Now that
and they keep trying. They keep trying. Like John Atack, he said, under this premise of he would ask Mike Rinder some questions for me. Mind you, I think this is back in January, February that I wrote the question. Like they were across a few emails. Because as things changed, then I was like, well, ask Mike Rinder this. Like, hey, he just came out with this blog about me. Can you ask him to apologize? Like, ask him about this. And so, but it was under this guise of, I will ask Mike Rinder the questions for you. And I never knew that they were going to be public. I never knew that that was going to be in a video, and I'll stand by my questions. That's not the issue. But if John Atack is on the one side saying that he's an advocate for victims, and he's saying that he wanted to ask these questions so that Miriam could get the answers or could have answers from Mike Rinder, that he could facilitate that. That's what under the guise of what took place, and yet. He has the conversation with Mike Rinder. He records it. He never provides the answers back to me. Like even just like a simple email to say like, these are the questions that I asked and these are his answers. Even if he didn't provide me with a video.
On a paywall. They put it for a month on a Patreon paywall. So what? So all of Mike Rinder's people that really gonna go pay for a Patreon from that man, watch him wash this off. And then when we little bit more distance. I mean, everything is so calculated and ridiculous, Mike Rinder. we can see straight through your BS of laundering operation, as if you're not
Yeah.
a master at making the perception happen. But you know what? Like somebody said on the chat, the internet is onto you, and you don't
Right.
understand how they can be. You don't understand how it works. And imagine every time
Mhm.
you speak, you just actually make less sense. And right
And the
now,
other thing is right, and the other thing is, Serge, is that he also not only is this like idea that he was in some kind of like it's just crazy advocacy role, which clearly, I mean, whatever, but also he misrepresented even the questions that I had asked. He asked him, and they spent a lot of time on it. They made a big deal about it. This question that I never even asked, but John never says that I never asked that question. That's John Atac's question. That's not Miriam Francis's question. And it's completely misleading. And the question was, did you ever criminally assault a child? That's what he asked Mike Rinder. And it's like, I never said that Mike Rinder criminally assaulted a child. And so they spent a lot of time on that. And that's a straw man argument, because they're taking something and they're making this big deal about it. So all this attention goes to this thing. And then, and I'm going, well, I didn't even ask that. Like, that's not even the topic of discussion that I
no,
was
but now
bringing
that
forward.
you're saying it, Mike Rinder, I mean, how clever of you idiots to put that question
Yeah.
there, as because again, it's like they're trying to pitch you as having these unhinged questions, right? It's like
Correct.
you were all
Correct.
into those unhinged questions. How about that, Mike Rinder? That's a question you answered in a sec check. Imagine
Mm-hmm.
you were all about asking people that type of disgusting, depraved question. In case you didn't know, in case you never saw a Sec Check KR in your life, Mike Rinder, in case a video recording of a session of a child was never provided to you, ask Claire
Mm-hmm.
Headley. Claire Headley would know the answer to that question. She was the RTC rep PAC. She was the one that was receiving all that info. So if you don't know anything about that, Mike Rinder, because you're so clueless about how Scientology works, ask Claire Headley. She would tell you the type of
Do you
questions that we're asking. And it's not the questions Miriam is asking. Miriam asked you very pertinent questions to her situationship today, right now, as it applied to something that you should have known about. I mean, never mind that yeah.
Yeah, and so there's actually a number of times where this a straw man argument is presented by John Atack, and then there's this like, oh, that's so okay, that's strange. And it's like this idea that exactly like you said, I'm being portrayed as someone who has asked unhinged questions. And yet, okay, so then ask the questions that I've asked him. Like, why don't you use my actual words? You have it all in writing there, it's on emails. Why don't you read out what I actually asked? Like, the fact that they have to layer it up with all these things, and they had to work so hard to, and then there's all the self-congratulatory things, and the book promoting, and it just like it went on and on and on. And I'm like, what are you doing? None of that is about asking Mike Rinder Miriam Francis's questions. This is a whole show. This is not what I like. This is, yeah. So it's crazy for him to never come back to me and say, hey, Miriam, just letting you know, I've had a conversation with Mike Rinder. I asked him the questions that you had, and these are his answers. And that would have been a clever thing to do. For if John Atack had done that, I mean, in hindsight, he's probably wishing he had, because when he came back to me with one question, so this was the one question he did come back to me. He said, Miriam, just letting you know, I did ask Mike Rinder this question. Now, I didn't know that the whole interview had taken place, or whether he just sent this question randomly ahead of it. Like, I don't know what the time frame of when it all occurred. But the question that he asked Mike Rinder is in regards to this case in 1985. And I had said that, I was asking about this particular case in Sydney in 1985. And Mike Rinder came back and he said, well, I didn't know anything about that case. And by the way, this is completely familiar to me because this is what he does all the time. He'll say, I didn't know anything about that because I was in the hole from 2004 to 2007. I didn't know anything about that because I was doing Lisa McPherson trial. I didn't know anything about that because... So in this case, of course, his classic answer, he comes back and he said, well, I didn't know anything about that because in 1985, I was the LRH PPRO, which is like the public relations person to create Hubbard's and forward Hubbard's image. And I said, I immediately was like, well, that's not true because in his book, he has a whole chapter. It's called PR for a Dead Man. And he says in there that it's 1990 that he becomes LRH PPRO. I mean, how is it that I know Mike Rinder's book better than Mike Rinder himself or John Atack, the expert on everything? Like, I immediately knew. I was like, no, 1990. He said it in his book that he became LRH PPRO. Then you see in the interview, rather than John Atack, he does say, oh, well, Miriam said this. But then rather than allowing Mike Rinder to explain why that would be, John Atack immediately jumps in and is like, well, that doesn't mean da-da-da because you could have been doing this while you were doing this and da-da-da. It's like, well, that's not what it says in his book. And also, why, John Atack, why are you answering Mike Rinder's questions? I mean, Mike Rinder, the questions that I have for Mike Rinder, I mean, that should be the title of that video. It should be John Atack's answers to the questions that Miriam asked, to some of the questions that Miriam asked Mike Rinder. That should have been the title of it.
Well, and to almost wrap up here, Miriam, and to really leave that question for him, it's like, Mike Rinder, you were on the board of Child USA. You were working on, what was it, the proudest moment of your life, opening up statutes of limitation for child SA survivors whose statutes may have ran out. Gee, I wonder if you knew that Miriam didn't have a way to open up a civil lawsuit, given that the statutes had run out. And imagine the type of help you could have been to her had you just given her a quick call. What's up, Miriam? Yeah, you know what? I'm working on this board of Child USA, a literal think tank to really help victims of abuse. And since I was a producer receiving money for putting the aftermath together, and since I did flew you over here, while you're at it, you got 3 years to, get yourself a civil attorney. Oh, no, Miriam, I can't help you. I'm too busy. But you know what? Find a civil attorney for yourself and see if they can, file on your behalf, because the statute of limitations is not going to be an issue. Bye. And you know what? He could have even given it to you like that, Miriam, and then you could have just gone and find something. And it's again, you weren't at the hole this time, Mike Rinder, and you weren't also covering up the death of Lisa McPherson. Your favorite two go-tos that you always bring up were not literally present in the situation. So why did you forget for 3 years to call up Miriam and tell her of that option that you supposedly really worked so hard to make happen? And why didn't you not tell just not Miriam? You didn't tell nobody. What product can you show us of somebody that you did check in with about that amazing opportunity you came up with? Imagine that.
So there was a brief window where the statute of limitations had been lifted. Mike Rinder, being involved with statute of limitations supposedly and being so well informed about statute of limitations at Child USA, and John Atack says, well, isn't that such a big contradiction? Well, yeah, what's a big contradiction is the fact that he didn't tell anybody about it when he knew that the window was there, and he was silent for those years. And you know what's insane is that the email that I got, I think this is December last year. I wrote an email to Leah Remini and I said, oh, hey, just letting you know, my criminal case is now before the, it's heading towards, it's about to be submitted for a decision to prosecute, I'm paraphrasing, something like that. And she was like, oh, that's so great. I always felt so bad that we could never do anything for you. And I was just like, what? Did you try? Like, I mean, I don't know. I did like, you're just saying, it's like, you know, then it's just like, I think I didn't expect her to do anything for me, but it's like the layers that they add to it, like where she's like, I'm sorry we couldn't. And it's like, well, I mean, could you have? I don't know.
It's called you're on a board. It's called you made money. It's called you were supposed to want to advocate for victims. It's called like, you know, those are just facts. Those are just things that are being brought up that don't make sense in the year 2024. At the time, we really thought that you were going to save another world, and we were hoping that you were, and we just thought your work was so hard that you couldn't do it. But you know what? Now that we're less naive, now that we're less gullible, now that we have more receipts, making the type of statements that we're making, in our opinion does evolve. Believe it or not, facts and things that don't make a shred of sense are allowed to change our opinion about you. Imagine how far we've come.
Yes.
We shared a stage with you at that aftermath thing, but imagine today, in what world would we have even done that if we had known all of this dysfunction was to be the case? We didn't know that then. We took you at your word. We took you at, yeah, you really want to save another world. You're doing it. It's so hard. And you know what?
And I didn't know nothing. Like, that's the thing, is like, he said, I didn't know anything about your case. Like, this is what he has told victims of Scientology repeatedly. I didn't know. I was doing this. I was in a hole. And the turning point for me was when it was towards the end of last year, when, later portion of last year, where I received the OSA documents and I started to look at them, and I was like, well, hang on. Like, doesn't seem like he was in a hole. Like, if he was in a hole, he had a lot of power in that hole. Like, it doesn't add up. Like, I didn't know anything about anything. But then in that same time period, you see in there the amount of records he has access to, all the reports that he's receiving, all the staff, like all the updates, these confidential, top secret documents that he still get. Like, it just doesn't add up. He has the power in there.
I'll give him this, okay, Miriam. He was a slave, right? And he had a slave contract. He would go on command inside a hole as long as David Miscavige told him to do that. That was on him to do. That's what he consented to have as a grown adult, grown man that he was, always working under David. That was up to him. So, you know, if you were powerful in a hole and outside of that hole, it's like, again, it's like, I mean, I'm just basically saying exactly what your point is, that we have receipts that don't reconcile. And you know what? You tell us what the truth is. You can set the record straight by setting it actually straight, by actually confronting all these inconsistencies that are being pointed out, that are literally should be common sense, that are literally, we're no geniuses, we're no Sherlock Holmes here. We just happen to have a front row seat at the dysfunction at the level that we did. A front row seat we should have never asked to be anywhere near, because we weren't of the age to consent to be having that type of front row seat.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, this Lizeka, render protected and moved PDF files all over the world. They always review, offend. Mike Rinder assured so many more children were PDF filed over the next 40 years. And yeah, it's the fact that they're still working with that same level of impunity, Mike Rinder. You should be outraged that you did that. You should be outraged at what you know your Office of Special Affairs is capable of doing. You should stop pretending that everybody there wants to save a world, because you weren't saving a world and neither are them. So why the hell do you go so soft on them? Why do you always just talk about generalities and you don't actually condemn a single thing? To what? To keep the possible deniability moving and going, as long as you run out every last shred of, you know, statutes of limitation, as if you hadn't planned that. I mean, in how many lawsuits have been brought? I mean, imagine we were just leaving the Sea Org right now in conjunction to when Mike Rinder was leaving it. How many more lawsuits could have been filed by now? We're talking 2007. We had no clue of our rights in 2007. We were clueless AF. We were complete dumb, gullible idiots. I mean, it is. We had no idea who the president was. We didn't care about politics. We were living in a world of complete and utter, arrested development is what it's called. I mean, to be a little bit more graceful with ourselves, but yes, that's what it's called. We were just complete, gullible, arrested, developed adults that had no clue.
Absolutely.
Question: at what point did MR refer to your case as an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10 for Scientology?
Mm-hmm.
Was that when you were on the Aftermath series, or was that a little later, more recently?
So that was more recently. That was in the beginning of January, the first week of January, when I had a phone call with him. I had 2 calls, which were on WhatsApp that we did. And that's when he explained that to me. And he was talking about priority, and like basically things are assessed by like risk and priority. Yeah. And that's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's very aware. Everybody there is aware, you guys. I mean, again, everything was run with protocols. Okay, Mike Rinder. So you didn't make up the protocols, you instituted
Mm-hmm.
them for
Mhm.
even a longer period than L. Ron Hubbard. So do we have to really go on a scale? Are you worse than L. Ron Hubbard or better? I mean, you're his protege, so you will always be his protege. So you instituted his legacy. It wasn't your vision, maybe, but you know what? It was his. And, like you just said, you even included about doing the PR for a dead man on a book of your chapters. But, maybe really check if there's not more things that are missing in that chapter, because it's giving that, L. Ron Hubbard taught you a formula to gain power, and then you went for it, and then you didn't back down, and then you continued, and then you doubled down, and then you tripled down, and then you quadrupled down, and there's no literal evidence, physical evidence that we can see where you're actually making the right choice and actually coming clean. Your needle is dirty, persistently dirty, Mike Rinder. Literally, like, this is what the needles would look like when they were withholding things, you guys. And you, Mike Rinder, have a persistent, dirty needle. You haven't come clean. You purport to be this, you purport to be that, but you know what? You know what you did. Don't make us come and have to do this. Like, you go and do the heavy lifting. It's what it's called. Go and do your own heavy lifting. Stop depending and relying on other people to do it for you. That's what you've done your whole life. You had a bunch of slaves. You got used to that royal treatment. You had children as slaves. You got used to that royal treatment. You did that for decades. You left. And now what? Where's your advocacy against child slavery that you propped up? Where is that? Where is that? Disgust with yourself? You don't have it, because you're still being pitched as the wonderful whatever that you literally are not. And nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's you and the rest of the posse. This isn't just you. This is Debbie Cook. I mean, Debbie Cook is the version of my child trafficker. I mean, that's why I always bring her up, Miriam. Is like, Mike Rinder recruited your mother. Well, Debbie Cook made the deal with my parents, right? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, not a cult of personality. They all are in up to their neck and ears in complicity. They cannot even point the finger. It was you. It was you. It was all of y'all together. Look at what's happening with P. Diddy right now. Who's getting the sons, the president, this one, that was like all these people in the network, right? It's like, stop pretending that there's levels and I'm here and I'm there and I've done all of this and my production record is really going to save me from aggravated child abuse. It isn't. Here's what you did for the last years. If those 40 years have all those, child crimes connected to it.
Yeah, and Serge as well. Like, so Mike Rinder had said that my story was the story, which, like, even when he said it to me, I was like, that sounds extreme. He said my story, and also I've heard that he has said this to other people as well, by the way. So he said that my story was the story that could bring down Scientology. I would argue that Mike Rinder's story is the story that could bring down Scientology. I mean, he is the key to everything. He literally, that one person could bring down Scientology. And I'm not talking about it in the ways that he has done it. I'm talking about it in the ways like the example that you just mentioned. How about in that 3-year window where the statute of limitations was waived for victims? Like, he could have gone out and just, okay, let's get a list. Let's contact all these people that we already know. We have already, like, we know how to get in touch with people. We know, it's just like, it's so crazy. He could talk about, there's so much he could talk about. So yeah, that's the gist of it. He is the key to the bringing down of Scientology. Mike Rinder holds that key. He has not used it to the extent that he could have.
Yeah.
And he made that choice. So now it's like, okay, now we got to do that work too. We got to do that work for you, Mike Rinder. Okay. Yeah.
Because again, Mike Rinder, in case you didn't get the memo, there's still kids there. Miriam and I have been replaced from the age that we were taken from our homes, from the age that we were trafficked into America from another country. That's why it matters. In what world is all of this happening right now, and then nothing gets done? In a world where, a lot of people are playing dumb. And again, it's like, we don't have the bandwidth or the patience for you playing dumb. We don't have to wait until another lifetime. That's not what we want to tell the kids that are stuck there. Better luck next lifetime. It didn't work out for you this lifetime. You are being child trafficked. Your passport is being locked up. Nobody gives an F. The FBI is running with they're all having a religious experience inside of those hotels. No one can do a shred of a thing. But you know what? People can do a shred of a thing, because it's called, you took an oath, you wrote the law, you have all these laws that are what? Are the laws just a bunch of platitudes, unenforceable platitudes that, mean a lot so that everybody goes, oh, we live in a very civil society. Well, if no one will apply the law, if 12-year-olds are expected to run out of their captor's house in handcuffs, then you know what? Damn.
Then we failed. The system has failed. If that's what it takes, like, they should have taken action back, when all those things were on public display. There was clear indication of abuse going on, and the people were saying, please do something about this. And Child Protective Services didn't act, and they failed those children. They really did. And so that child had to escape. Like, it's just like, oh, come on, like, what are we doing here? I mean, I escaped Scientology when I was working there when I was a kid, and I ended up in the hands of LAPD. They kept me in handcuffs for 4 hours. They kept me in a cell. They kept me in an interview room. All it was like this one, like, stainless steel bench and 4 walls in this small little room. So maybe it was like a holding room. I don't even know what it was, but I'm sure it was meant to intimidate me, which it did. It intimidated the hell out of me. And I
how old?
At that time I was 16. Yeah. But I was a very, very young, naive 16-year-old who had been isolated from the world.
As a 16-year-old in handcuffs when you were trying to escape from Scientology.
They did. And then they placed me into temporary foster. So it was called the Soda Home. And they placed me in that overnight. And then the Church of Scientology, the representative, was able to come and get me the next afternoon and take me back. And like, I just had this harrowing experience with the LAPD. I'm like, oh yeah, it really is crazy out here. Oh, it really is. The government and law enforcement really are evil, just like Scientology told me, just like Hubbard told me. Look how they treated me. I was crying for ages. And in the conversation, the things that I was saying, there's no way that they couldn't have understood, like, oh, something is terribly wrong here. They asked me where my mother was. I said, I didn't know. They said, why don't you know? I said, they said, what's her address? I said, it's a confidential location. Like, that's a fair indication that this child is something is going terribly wrong with this child in the way that she's being held by an organization, away from her mother, and she can't know where her mother is. And then, so that it's like, it's so crazy. So yeah, LAPD failed me. They failed me then, like, just like how the system has failed these children.
Yeah. I mean, it's abominable, Miriam. And to hear you say that, it just actually it really resonates with me, because again, it's like, I thought so many times of going to the police, but I was like, they're not gonna believe me. I'm gonna end up, there was nowhere to go. There's really nowhere to
There's
go.
nowhere to
You're
go.
so stuck in it, and you're so, and unfortunately, again, the only thing that would help me at that time was to just disassociate and think about, it's like, you just, nothing else ends the pain. It seems like you're just like in this, like, incredible amount of pain. And this is what Cuddly Floofage says: I love you both so much. I was abused as an only child, and I'm still not believed. All my love always. Cuddly Floofage, thank you so much. And
We believe you.
we
We
believe
believe
it.
you.
We get how it's done. We get
Yeah.
how it's done, and we get how many systems. And luckily, if there's any literal silver linings of this, is we have so many of you in our community that are, resonating with our plight because of that fact. Because, again, turns out that the Jody Hildebrands of the world, the Mike Rinders of the world, the Debbie Cooks of the world are all
Yes.
following the same playbook. Ghislaine Maxwell, these people are drunk on power. They're delusional, and they use children, and then they cannibalize said children that they get unfeathered access to. And,
Yeah.
again, the only way to tip the scale is that more of these people end up actually facing repercussions, so that the people can think twice about doing it. I mean, again, in the movie industry, you would say the Me Too movement. I mean, can we say that no other abuse is going on? No, but at least they know that they did hold Harvey Jakes accountable, that they did hold Jody Hildebrand and Ruby Frankie finally accountable. And the Scientology
We're
parents,
gonna keep.
all of you
Yeah,
guys.
we're gonna keep seeing more of it, because this is right now this is the global movement for recognizing the harm against children, and we're going to be seeing more and more and more of these stories come out. This is on a globalized scale, because the
Scientology
children.
alone, you guys. Scientology alone is
Right.
globalized. So this is a
Correct.
global scheme
Yes.
being allowed and perpetrated in all countries, from Australia to the United States to Mexico to Venezuela to Italy to Germany to the United Kingdom, to all where this scourge of a
Yes.
convicted felon that the United States literally propped up. So, and this question from LA Toronto is: why are kids stuck in Scientology not enough to rescue? What about the raids that took kids from Warren Jeffs? What does it take? It would stop. I won't stop until they do. Yeah, exactly, LA Toronto. Well, what does it take? I mean, it takes, again, law enforcement doing their job. Perhaps it takes HSI, the agency that is supposed to be handling trafficking of Homeland Security, the ones that just raided P. Diddy's home, should be raiding those hotels where they will find what? Minors, where they will find what? Video recordings of the sadistic abuses that these people call a religious experience, with a straight face, without a
Yeah.
qualm. It's like you see with Jody and what? We were helping the kids. The kids are the devils. The kids are the ones with the problem. And it's like, you know what? Maybe they weren't. So,
That's exactly right. So that answer is, the reason why is because everyone is looking at it through this lens of it being a religious experience. Everyone's telling us how religious it was for us. We've got John Atack telling us how religious it was. It's like, it wasn't religious. It was abuse of children. And that's why nothing has been done by law enforcement. And it's documented that they tried to intervene a number of times, but it was enough for the officials, and Mike Rinder admits that he was involved in that, to sort of scurry away what was happening with the kids, to misrepresent what was happening to kids, and to hide the facts. And so you've also got that as well. But the main thing is, see, they can't just walk inside. And again, I think they've tried, but there's enough that yeah, it's just that religious protection, that exemption is very, very, very powerful. It's so powerful. So you didn't have any rights because it was a religion then. You don't have a right, and like no one still has any right because it's a religion now. So that's why the tax exempt status is such a core issue. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the tax status, again, it's like racketeering isn't a tax status situationship. So the IRS,
Mhm.
if you are involved getting all manner of deals by Scientology, double check if that's going to be in your best interest, because currently you're the agency that is providing self-admitted felons with tax incentives to be part of that. And if you don't know what that means, then double check the pitch that Mike Rinder, Marty Rathbun, and David Miscavige put in front of you in conjunction with their lawyers, who were supposed to be lawyers of the court, officers of the court, never supposed to be lying. Check if Monique Yingling didn't lie in her pitch, as she purported to really want to save a world and really help a convicted felon that wanted to escape a shred of oversight. Because they're going to save a world, so then law enforcement can check what we're doing to kids that we are abducting at an industrial size scale. So again, it doesn't make sense. It is unacceptable, and it needs to stop. Marty girl,
Absolutely.
are you aware of Gary Armstrong, who has been fair game by Rinder for 40 years? He has info on tax exempt status. Look him up. Yeah, I think I'm aware of Gary Armstrong. And I mean, again, you guys, Gary Armstrong was somebody with L. Ron Hubbard. What we would love for these whistleblowers to do is to really actually confront who they propped up, because it took all of them together to have it propped up. And L. Ron Hubbard
Yeah.
hasn't been called enough out for what he did. And these people that literally propped up all this stuff, because again, L. Ron Hubbard wasn't part of my life or your life, Miriam. Like, we don't have anything to tell L. Ron Hubbard. All we have is his stupid ass books. But the people that did this to us weren't called L. Ron Hubbard. It was our parents, Mike Rinder, Debbie Cook, the people that were in our vicinity abducting us is who hurt us. So, you know.
Yes. And so I have been in contact with Jerry Armstrong, and I do know a lot about his story. I have watched videos where he's spoken about things that have happened. I mean, there's tons and tons available on YouTube and also on Google. And I'm hoping to possibly do something with him to have a chat in future. We've spoken about that. So yeah, it's none of it's come. We're just sort of like, yeah, we've just been we've been in contact, so we'll just see what happens. But yeah, I would love for, I mean, his story is out there, so anyone can access that. It doesn't really need me to sort of bring it, but it's
Again,
an important story. Yeah.
It's an important story, but here's the problem with all their important stories, that nothing is important as long as children are there. And as much as they want to make it about, oh, I was in a cult, I was this, I was that, if they're not coming through to advocate on behalf of kids, which is not what they've actually advocated for. They've talked about every single thing to do with every single thing else that happens in those hotels. And yes, a lot of dysfunction happens in those hotels, you guys. Yes, it's true. But in Scientology, when they did teach me how to investigate, they told me, don't take up an altered importance. An altered importance is something that somebody literally says, oh, I'm going to really come clean. I'm going to tell you this thing. And they're literally telling you something that doesn't matter as much as the other thing that really does matter. And if you're really going to get to the bottom of the investigation, they're forwarding this so that you get distracted from this. But that is an actual decision and choice. Why is it that in the year 2024, the reluctance to literally call out these systemic abuses that are absolutely outrageous? And why haven't they been called out? Like, if Gary Armstrong would have done that advocacy, you know, years ago, maybe more children would have woken up. If John Atack, that went and did a lot of research, in what world do you do a lot of research and you don't connect that dot for yourself? Why is it us that have to connect that dot for you? And it's like, that's what's come down to. You know, it's like, what dot are you going to connect for anybody? L. Ron Hubbard is a convicted felon. You all followed him while knowing that was the case. That's a publicly available record. Then you literally went and followed to the letter everything he pitched. And then, yeah, their slave contracts didn't work out the way they wanted and they left. And then they went in around and, oh, yeah, L. Ron Hubbard shouldn't have been followed. And what? And where was your advocacy for underage kids? Where is it? Why hasn't it stopped? Why are you not talking today as we speak? Why are you and I doing the only talks about this? Where's the rest of the Scientology parents telling on themselves, saying, no, they're right. I'm raising a red flag. I was a parent. I put my children through this. This shouldn't be happening. None of them have realized it. Damn. It's the year 2024 and nothing still today. Nothing to say, nothing to literally put on the public record. I mean, that's all we can go with.
And we've had a couple of people that I know, but that is insane. Like that ratio of like, well, you've had thousands of parents that came out of this, and there has been a couple of people that have had some powerful voices or advocacy that they did. Well, namely, I would say one, which was Mark Plummer, and he collated a bunch of these documents, about the children's documents that now we're able to, now we have actual documentation that. Again, further documentation of the abuses. But yeah, there's another parent that I have seen in the comments.
But to borrow one of their words, Miriam, is an incorrect estimation of effort. That's what they called it, okay, you guys, in the hotels. So
why is there only one or two people? Like there's tons of parents that have come out.
Correct. And that's what it's called. That's why it's like, do you care about this issue or not, Scientology parents? Because if there's an incorrect estimation of effort, I'm going to really stop what's happening. And then what have you done? What have you done on the public record that has shown something effective that is really going to rein it back in, right? That is going to erect the guardrails of, oh, you know what? No, right? It's like Scientology still abusing minors. That has never been the public's general concern because people didn't understand it. I mean, that's not what they were getting pitched. That's not what they were being told. They were being fed what? Altered importances. Oh, look at this, look at that, look at that. And yes, there's a lot of things to discuss, but it's like going back to the point, it's like, why do we care to discuss that if the only thing that matters when we look at it from the experience that we went through, given that we wouldn't wish our experience on anyone whatsoever. No kid should be having this experience for themselves right now. It does tear me apart on a daily basis to think, oh, there's another child being taken in session, another child being told in ethics that we need to do a treason condition, another child being groomed on a course with a doll to normalize, these disgusting role plays. That
while they're making money for the organization, like, this is still going on. There are still adults profiting off of children being placed in situations that they should not be experiencing, that violate their rights, that violate the things common that need to be in humanity. Right. Common sense. Absolutely.
It's like we all saw Ruby Franke and Jody Hillebrand. If you watch that and still go, well, there's other ways to look at this because what, right? It's like if people are sitting here with that type of attitude, then they really need to go check themselves and their humanity, and so, well, you guys, again, thank you so much for all 242 of you that showed up for this chat with Miriam. And, as we continue to take baby steps, because we cannot forget that, the road of 1,000 miles is begun with one step. And, nothing is going to change overnight, but, we are going to continue to question the public record, and we're going to continue demanding accountability, and we're going to continue raising awareness and more advocacy for kids, because there cannot be enough. And, the more the merrier. This is a situation that does call for that. The more the collective, as a group, as a nation, as all of us together go, no, this cannot happen. This cannot be. They lose that oxygen. They need no one to be calling this out. They need no one to be connecting any dots. They need everything to be alleged. Well, you know what? There's plenty of evidence inside of the hotels. So stop telling
Mhm.
us that your job is hard. Lawyers out there, stop telling us that your job is hard. All the powerful agencies that are supposed to be preventing crimes against children to be happening. Is your job hard? Do you earn
Mhm.
6 figures? Then do it better, because
Mhm.
taxpayers of this country are paying you to do a job and you're not showing up to do the job. As long as these people operate, that job is not getting done.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
why are you monetized? Are you not monetized yet? Have you not done your hours?
No. No, because I only have a few videos on there, and I've never done. Yeah, I don't have any live videos on there.
No, no,
But
it's
thank
just
you,
baby
Laura.
steps.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just baby
Yeah.
steps. Again, you guys, it's just baby steps that we're taking on a daily basis. We're not going anywhere and we're not in a rush. We
Yeah.
just are showing up here every day. We are thankful for the support. We are thankful for holding space for us and for all those kids. We are thankful that people care. We're thankful that there's other survivors that see themselves through us and our advocacy, because, you know, it is your advocacy too. It's not us. No
Mm.
one here has the solution to all the answers in the world. Whoever tells you that, run, because that's exactly how we got here in the
Yeah.
first place. So, you know, none of
Yeah.
us are that special. None of us are that important. None of us
Mhm.
matter that much. We simply don't. But together as a collective, we do matter, because together as a collective, we can say no. And the more people that, you know, join us on this journey to demand accountability, the easier it will be. And the sooner we
Mhm.
will see those hotels being shut down. If P. Diddy's being raided, there's no reason in the world, since Scientology is doing what P. Diddy is doing times a billion. So
Yes.
in what world is this tiny operation, Ghislaine Maxwell, this small, Jeffrey Epstein, this small, you know, Jody Hildebrand, this small? This is an operation that is all of those things combined, and then some, and then some, and then some across the
Mhm.
world. And yes,
Mhm.
all law enforcement agencies of the world need to wake up. You know, this information is being made publicly available. We're not trying to monetize. All my videos don't always get demonetized. We always talk about whatever YouTube doesn't want us to say. We don't give an F. We're not here to make money. We're here to ensure that everything we discuss and everything we can react to on the public record to hopefully raise the awareness that we need in order for
Mhm.
these systemic abuses to stop. And is it going to take a long time? Fine. I mean, it'll take as long as it takes, right?
Yeah.
And that's our superpower. We're going to be patient AF with all of you here witnessing this journey and traveling this journey together, and hopefully, you know, making a change so that these things do change. So thank you guys all for being here. Thank you to all our mods. Thank you to Miriam. This is your baby step of baby steps, but this will be many lives to come. You know exactly what you're saying. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. You always, you know, make a lot of sense. So for as much as we
That's good.
keep telling that we don't make sense, I mean, you know what, we're not children anymore. We are adults in
Mhm.
adult bodies, and from adults in adult bodies that we are, you know, really talking about this, you know, changing for the better. So
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for watching, and
Thank you. Thanks.
we'll see you all extremely soon. Bye bye.